Welcome to the East Bay's best podcast, The Capstone Conversation. This is a show that interviews political, government, and community leaders in Alameda, Contra Costa, and Solano counties. We look at what is going on in your city, how are we developing things economically, and where are we going from here? I'm your host, Jared Ash. Welcome to today's episode of the Capstone Conversation. I'm joined by Don Burris from the city of Vacaville. He is the Economic Development Director there. And I've known Don for the better part of a year now. One of the intriguing things of why I reached out to him was I was recently at a conference and a life science company was talking about why they chose Vacaville. And it was about the responsiveness of Don as an individual, but also about the ecosystem that the city is building there, plus a combination of fast track permitting, which has come up in a lot of podcast episodes. Time to approve somebody there, the ability to work through a city. So we're going to learn to see, why has Vacaville been expanding and getting a number of life science companies, how they're building out a tech center, and where the city's going from there. So Don, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Jared.
Why don't you walk us through your background and your professional career, and then give us an overview from there about what is happening in the city of Vacaville?
Oh, goodness. Let's see. I got to California in 2000 after finishing graduate school at Purdue University. And I got to San Jose and Silicon Valley, like in the height of the .com kind of boom, and was fortunate enough to work with the city of San Jose in the mayor's office and doing some level of economic development, then staffing the mayor as he went to talk with some of the many companies that were located within our city. Then on to the San Jose Redevelopment Agency, where I got to do a more extensive economic development work and got a great chance to meet with the titans of Silicon Valley and continue to bring more businesses into San Jose. We ran several incubator programs to keep creating a pipeline for industry within our city and our region. So been in economic development now for about 17 years. And that wasn't my focus after getting out of graduate school. I'm in my undergrad degree is in engineering. So my career actually started in very technical engineering work, working for the Department of Defense. I worked on the Apache combat helicopter. So it's crazy that I've gone from this kind of super technical engineering work to this role in economic development, which for me, I really feel like it's more of a facilitation role, right? We're kind of the guys, I always joke and say we're the guys behind the curtain. Like no one really knows who the AD people are and the deals that we help to facilitate. But everyone knows all the elected officials, the mayors and the city council members that are waving the flag of success. So I'm okay with being a little guy behind the curtain, though.
Well, hopefully they won't get jealous that you're on the podcast and not have them. We'll have them next.
There you go.
And I think we can say you're the first guest that has helped build a war helicopter.
Yeah.
On here. That makes 15, 16 episodes in. That makes you a little bit unique.
All right.
So tell me about Vacaville itself. What kind of community is it?
So unfortunately, one of the things people think of when they think of Vacaville is that we're a rural farming community. That is actually incorrect. It is just a suburban community. There are farms outside of the city limits, like almost any small city in Northern California. But it's a good community. It's had a lot of industry over the last 35 years that have quietly been working within our community. Very family friendly, very family focused. Most of the things that we as a city partner with really do have a lot to do with the quality of life for our families and their children. And I think that's a huge attraction for a lot of people that have been moving into the community over the past years, that it is definitely a family friendly or family focused community. But coming into Vacaville after leaving the city of San Jose, what made me really interested in the city is just the amount of opportunity there is, and opportunity all the way around. So as economic development people, We have workforce development opportunities. We have housing opportunities, creating great housing that's not just for the families, but missing middle housing for the young professionals that are moving into the community. And then ultimately, the two industrial parks and business park, probably the most amount of vacant land in all of Northern California as far as the city is concerned. So I saw a lot of opportunity there, a lot of opportunity to grow the economy, bring in great businesses, work with our workforce partners, work with the school district. So honestly, it's been a lot of fun and has allowed me to use all of my experience in economic development.
So what is the big picture of attracting businesses there? In talking to you, you have a strong plan and a vision for what the city should become and the types of businesses you want to attract.
Absolutely. We did some work. So when I first arrived at Vacaville as an economic development professional, we looked to identify what those assets are within our communities and try to exploit those as ways to grow the economy. So arriving to Vacaville, quickly I learned that we did have some advanced manufacturers there and that we did actually have a small cluster of biomanufacturing facilities. Looking at how much land that we had available, I thought that it could be a possibility where we could actually grow that industry. So working with a couple professional site selectors and a few economists and some experts in the biotech industry, we had some focus groups and really determined that there was a lot of room left to grow the bioeconomy in Vacaville. So we started putting together a strategy to do that. We launched the strategy in 2020, believe it or not, like right at the height of COVID. We launched a strategy during COVID, but it wasn't 3 months later that we started getting inquiries from biomanufacturing companies that were looking for locations to build facilities. So if we look at that, like fast forward to what we think our future would be, we're preparing for that bioeconomy. We're trying to put pieces in place right now that will not just make the city a great place for biomanufacturing, but for all of the biotechnology industry. So we're looking at supply chain companies and support services and incubators and R&D space. So we're really preparing our city and our region to be the next place where biotechnology or life science uses can flourish.
So that's a great plan, right? You're focused on a specific industry, even a specific sector within an industry. People say life sciences. You're looking at the biofield here. How did you come to that conclusion to narrow down and say, this is the industry? Is it that you had a workforce there? Did you have one company already when you talk about those pre-existing assets? How did you get to that conclusion?
So working with the existing companies that are in Vacaville, I know everyone knows Genentech because it's the world's largest cell production facility. But actually, Genentech was kind of like the new kid on the block. They arrived in the late 90s, but Vacaville's had biomanufacturing facilities there for like 35 years. So we were able to talk with the industry leaders to determine, well, is there more that can be done? What more can we do to continue to grow the industry? So working with industry professionals, they helped us to determine, well, yeah, we have over 500 acres of vacant land. We knew that when it came to biomanufacturing, that most companies would probably shy away from leasing a building and then put $250 million into a building they don't own. So we really thought, well, maybe our sweet spot or our niche in the industry would be actual greenfields. Because would it make more sense for a company to build with the level of infrastructure that needs to be in a building? It probably would make more sense to build a facility as opposed to leasing a facility and doing those expensive tenant improvements. And that worked out for us. Now I have 30 acres left.
How many? 500?
Yeah. All I have left is 30 acres.
And what was that 500 acres beforehand? Was that farmland?
No, it's all within our industrial parks. So we have 2 industrial parks and 1 business park. So prior to those employment lands being created, it would have been most likely ranches, cattle ranches.
But that's going back 30 plus years. So
that's going back almost 50 years.
50 years. So it was an industrial park. It was meant as job centers before, but it was vacant. What was that? Paint a picture of what that greenfield was.
Oh, yeah, it was definitely vacant. So I actually had to go out and canvass the developers to say, hey, we've got this vacant land, right? And our location, being one of the cities in the Bay Area, our location, it was just perfect. Two turns from the Port of Oakland, 3 international airports that are all within an hour of our city. So there's just a lot of great attributes that make the city attractive for business. So I literally went out and talked with the development community to say, hey, we have a lot of opportunity in our city. Come check it out. So I gave a number of tours. Let's see, Buzz Oates probably was one of the biggest developers in our community. LDK is another big developer in our community. We made great relationships with them, and they've continued to build inventory in our cities.
Okay. And I know one of your proud achievements is a tech park, which is 1,400 acres. So I'm assuming that's not on the 500 acres.
That is correct. Yeah. So again, as we prepare for the future of this whole bio economy, we do have 1,400 acres at the top of the city that has been reserved for our next employment lands. So if we listen to the economists and all the industry experts, they're all forecasting that the life science industry has not peaked at whatsoever, and that technically, because of the cost of money right now, that there's a lot of pent-up demand. So the economists are predicting that once the cost of money comes down, we're going to see a lot of life science companies literally flood the market. So we're trying to get ahead of the game. We're trying to have our new technology park do all the policy work, all the CEQA work, all the land use work to have a shovel-ready place for developers to come and build a new tech park, for companies to come and build new facilities. And the reason I'm using the terminology tech park is we're not looking for the traditional industrial uses for this area. We're definitely not looking for logistics uses for this area, where we are truly talking about biotechnology uses, advanced manufacturing uses, which are much cleaner than traditional manufacturing, and obviously biotechnology uses.
And so you're getting the land. Is it land now, or what's that space?
So it is land. So some of the land is within the city limits. Some of it is still within the county, within our sphere of influence. So we have to annex some of those properties in, just all the policy work around creating a new employment land. So we're looking at that 3-year horizon. So if we stay on track, we should have all of that policy work done within the 3-year period. And that kind of aligns with what all of the economic pundits are saying about what the markets will look like in 3 years.
And is the city paying to bring out utilities and infrastructure out there, or would that be part of the development?
So that's a good question. So yes, we are actually about to launch a master infrastructure study. We do have water that reaches that area, but sewer does not reach that area. So we're doing the master infrastructure study to see what do we need to shore up to make sure that we do have all the backbone infrastructure in place so that the development community can come in and literally it be shovel ready.
And you're not looking for one company to fill 1,400 acres. You're looking for, as I'm listening to you, a number of companies that can come in and invest in large facilities.
Exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay. With life science companies, bioscience in particular, water is a big product need compared to other industries. California, big drought prone state. How are you planning for this water need in their production facilities?
That's a very good question, Jared. I'm so happy that our previous utility director, absolutely brilliant gentleman, Royce, I have to give him a shout out. We probably have the best water rights in Northern California. We have enough water that we actually sell some to other cities within Solano County. So we're good. And as far as wastewater treatment's concerned, we were required by the state to build a tertiary treatment facility, probably maybe 10 years ago. So we have plenty of excess capacity to handle treatment as well as supplying water.
Great. So one of the things that you and I have talked about is risk adverse, and cities are risk adverse. But here you're talking about creating 1,400 acre, building infrastructure, spending 3+ years doing policy work, maybe 5, because you're talking 3 years ahead. You've probably already been doing it for 2 to 3. That's a big investment to the concept from Field of Dreams, build it and they will come. That's pretty risky in some ways.
To a degree it is, but I think that's where we are in the 21st century. The concept of employment lands has changed dramatically. It's no longer okay to go to work outside of the city limits or in the suburban area of your city, and your office is in the middle of a food and amenity desert. That day's long gone. So the new employment lands need to have a mix of features. So it needs to have green space so that when employees want to take a break, they have some place to go to clear their heads and enjoy the outdoors. It's going to need workforce housing so that people don't have to commute to go to work or have that far of a commute. It needs to have some amenities, whether it's restaurants, fitness facilities. It really needs to be a little more comprehensive than what we saw back in the day. And again, now in the 21st century, developers aren't looking to get to a city and have to put in infrastructure before they can even consider building a project. So that's why it's important for all cities, for us as economic development people, to encourage our cities to put in at least the backbone infrastructure, because that saves time on the development side. It saves money on the development side. And time and money are two of the things that can kill any project.
Well, okay, let's talk about time and money. So permitting time often comes up. How long does it take for a city to get a business through an approval process? And if you're a small business and a restaurateur and it takes you a year or 2 years to build out a facility and get permits and get open, that's a lot of time you're investing in your business. You scale that up to a company that's hiring 500, 1,000 decent paying jobs. Talk about the permit process in Vacaville. You've been in the news about a fast track process. How are you doing it? What's driving that?
So the fast track program that we created was very specifically for biotechnology and advanced manufacturing industries. The reason we can actually work so quickly is we've had those industries in our community for over 35 years. And us being a smaller community, a lot of our staff have been here from the very beginning. For example, all the staff that worked to permit that huge Genentech facility are still in Vacaville. So when Genentech came in to do their second building, we literally processed that application over the counter. We were already familiar with the facility, the staff, policies, all of the research that needed to be done. So we were already familiar with all of that. So it didn't need to go through an arduous 9 months or even 12-month process that I know can happen in other cities. So we looked at that as really a competitive advantage that our staff already has that experience. So we were really able to say, we can turn you around in 90 days. And I think we proved that point when Transwestern came in with their Axiom Point project. Literally on the 90th day, the project was approved.
Way to get down to the wire there. But
Yeah.
90 days is great. And that comes up particularly around Fremont success as well and bringing in new companies there. So why can Vacaville do it? Maybe Fremont do it and other cities?
That's a very good question, Jared. I think it has a lot to do with the experience of your staff. And then 2, the commitment and support that you can receive from your city council. Sometimes you might need additional staff to really be able to get through, help people get through the process quicker. And you're going to need support from your mayor and city council to provide you with the resources. Our council is 100% on board. And I thank them every time that I see them, because the truth of the matter is our success as a city is coming from the fact that our council is providing city staff with the resources that we need to actually be successful. So I think that is something that if all cities are looking at trying to help improve that improve their process, it really is about getting them all the resources they need. And then we did, right now I'm working with our community development director, Ms. Erin Morris, to look at like a red tape reduction program. And I think a lot of cities probably at some point need to step back and look at their development process, look at the tenant improvement process, and look at, well, are all these steps necessary? If there was one thing that we could eliminate, what could that one thing be? Are there multiple things we can eliminate? How can we actually make the process easier and more attractive for the development community? And we're in the process of even doing more streamlining right now. So we're in the process of creating what we're calling our red tape reduction program to see what more can we do to make all of the development processes in our city easier.
That's great. And part of it sometimes is just the will and the leadership, right? The determination to say,
Absolutely.
We want to do this. We want to look at what's causing the red tape and how do we improve it.
You had mentioned
the things that's come up as success in cities is when they have a point person.
Yes.
Sometimes called the concierge. Sometimes cities say, well, we have somebody who could be that person. But you're talking about working across multiple departments for all of these companies. And so somebody to say, hey, Don is going to walk you through and I'm going to go. So you don't have to go to community development or parks and rec or water. I'm going to take care of all of that. And I'm going to go bother those people for you. Have you guys tried that? And has that been part of the success?
So for most economic development departments, we do act as that ombudsman. We oftentimes developers or companies will contact us first before they contact the community development department to see what that process is like. And I think most of the larger companies know that we probably should be their first stop. And I think most of the major development companies know economic development should really be their first stop before they try to engage the rest of the city departments. So another good question, Jared. So I've got to give a shout out on this answer. So my buddy, Paul Wynn and the city of Hayward, Paul created an award-winning program, their business concierge program, where it actually is a cross-functional team that is assigned to a small business or a large business for that matter to help them get through the complexity of getting through the city systems. So we are actually mimicking Paul's program with Paul's blessing. So thank you, Paul, to actually put that in place. So it will no longer just be the economic development team. It will be a cross-functional team of public works and utilities and finance and building and code enforcement. And so really a big cross-functional team. And we'll work with that company with the same people through the entire process.
That's great. And so we've been talking a lot about things the city is doing to speed up the time and make it easier for people. One of the problems companies, developers, everybody's complaining about that's slowing them down is outside of city control is PG&E and the need for power.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
It is a statewide problem. It's been conversations at many of the economic development conferences locally on what can be done. It's disappointing in this respect that there are several industries right now that can really flourish within the state of California, but many of them are choosing to leave California, not because of the cost. And in truth, let me address that real quick too, Jared, if you don't mind. We hear a lot of companies say, and other states say, well, the cost of doing business in California is too expensive, so why go there? So if we look at some of the industries, and of course, since biotechnology is the industry that we're really kind of focused on, the other areas of the country where life sciences are flourishing, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, those are not cheap markets, right? Those are not cheaper markets than being in California. So the cost of doing business, I think that's all kind of relative based on what the industry is. So I think upfront that needs to be addressed, that we're not so expensive that companies can't locate and flourish within the state of California. And I'm sorry, what was the original?
We're talking, well, that was a good point, right? It's different when like a manufacturing company goes to the middle of nowhere, Texas. They say they're in Dallas, but they're an hour and a half outside in Bacon. You're talking about educated workforces, innovative companies that are in places that have high college degrees or a higher educated workforce. And I think that's important. California is offering that to people. The original question was about PG&E and the need for power for these companies.
So yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing me back. So PG&E, the difficulty there is we're losing companies not because of the cost of doing business in California. We're losing business because of PG&E's inability to meet the power requirements. And that is a very difficult thing for us because we as economic developers feel like we're being held hostage by PG&E, and that our state's success is really going to be determined now by that public utility.
Interesting. All the more arguments for microgrids and renewable energy, but which
Absolutely.
is expensive by itself. But interesting to hear that that the biggest fear in economic development is just one of the basic concepts of having enough power generation in the system.
So within Solano County, where the city of Vacaville is located, two of our cities, we have engaged some consultants to look at, well, can we create some distributed electrical resources throughout the city so that we don't have to be so energy dependent on PG&E? Can we create some microgrids around the city, microgrids within our employment lands, so that our hands aren't tied with PG&E as far as them being able to provide us with the amount of electricity these companies need? So very interesting that I can give you an example. Working with the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, they can come through with some great leads for all of our cities to follow up on. But some of them we literally have to pass on simply because of the power requirement. So the solar industry kind of suffers a little bit with us not responding to those RFPs because it's very difficult to get the level of power that they need to produce their products. I think the same could be said for the electric vehicle industry. So yeah, PG&E is that access to power is going to be a real deterrent for all of us in economic development. So it's something that we have to address. And to be fair, we have been in conversations with PG&E about power supply within our region in Solano County.
You'd think just with all the people and companies moving out of the state that we keep hearing about, as you referenced earlier, that they'd have plenty of extra power around, right? We haven't been growing so much as a state compared to others. So that'll be interesting. And I've done some work in procurement for cities and renewable energies. And it still does, the right project can still pencil in California, although the CPUC and their new regulations have made it a lot harder to net meter and do things. But a microgrid itself can still be viable. A tech park or an industrial area that are more sectioned off, It may make sense because they're also going to have more stability. They won't go out in the fires when they shut off half of Northern California.
Stability and reliability.
Yeah. So I want to ask about California Forever, just because it's a hot topic in Solano. I'm not going to ask for your opinion about it for political stance.
Mm-hmm.
From an economic development standpoint, if you're talking about the creation of housing for 100,000 people and putting 100,000 people, what do you think it does for economic development? Is it one of their arguments is that it will create local jobs? These people can live and work here. They'll bring in new businesses.
Well, definitely there's some truth to that. I think one of the things that stood out for me is the increase in the talent pool. So depending on the type of industries that new city would focus on, that brings more talent into our county in general. And industry follows talent, right? So we look at the growth of just the tech sector in the Bay Area, and we see how we've gone from 7 cities in Solano County all the way up the peninsula, and now to San Francisco, across into the East Bay, pushing past the East Bay into the smaller East Bay cities, all the way up to Tracy. So we see that now those tech workers who live outside of the city, then it's not so much of an issue for a company to expand operations in Walnut Creek or Concord, because now there actually is a workforce that lives in that area, because industry really is going to follow talent. So I think if they're creating a community that's going to be 100,000 plus, then I think the upshot is that they will be bringing new talent into our community. And that's great for all of us, because now the industry has more talent to choose from.
That's great. I appreciate it. And that's also why I think you see bioscience companies cluster around other bioscience companies, it's because they want to build off that talent. And going back to what you're talking about, Genentech and others, right? You're creating an ecosystem for people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Working with the Workforce Development Board for the county, we look at like what our actual talent pool is within our city, within our region. And then if we're expected to create very specific jobs or specific industries, then we have to have the talent in our area to support those industries.
So talking about that, you're fairly close in Vacaville to UC Davis, one of a major university in California, a major national research institute. Does that help with economic development and workforce, or is there an advantage there? Partnership?
With UC Davis, we do have a great partnership. They've been part of our biotech strategy from the beginning, and they are a great pipeline as well for talent. So let's see, gosh, we partnered on so many things. We partnered on continuing education projects. They are a good pipeline as well with their biotech programs, not just their undergraduate programs, but their master's programs. So yeah, they've been a good partner. Our community college, they have been great partners as well with their biotechnology program, being able to turn out manufacturing technicians. So it's been good.
Great. I appreciate that. Any last thoughts on economic development and the success in Vacaville before we head out?
Oh, goodness. That's so broad, but I think there's a level of excitement in our community and our county because we all see the opportunity now. I think the stars are all aligning for our cities and the county that we know that we have a real value proposition for industry and a great location for industry, for families. I know we didn't talk about housing or the cost of housing, but we're still like 30% cheaper than housing in the Central Bay Area. You can still get homes in Vacaville for $500,000. So I think our region is really ready for that level of growth. And again, happy to be able to bring more of those talented individuals out of the Central Bay Area into our part of the Bay Area.
So great. I appreciate it. That was Don Burris, the Economic Development Director from the city of Vacaville. I appreciate you being here today, Don.
Thank you, Jared. I appreciate you having me.
Please hit subscribe so you get the weekly updates of when we release the next episode. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Capstone Government Affairs and Economic Development, a firm where I serve as managing partner. For more information, check us out at www.capstonegov.com and follow us on LinkedIn by typing in Capstone Government. Check out the show notes, and for a full transcript, visit our website, www.capstonegov.com, and follow us on LinkedIn by typing in Capstone Government, or you can find me, your host, Jared Ash.